The reputed boss of bosses in organized crime, Carmine Galante, was assassinated today as he lunched with friends in a little Italian restaurant in Brooklyn.
It was one of the major gangland executions of recent decades, and yet most of the people around here didn't know who the big man was. Carmine Galante, one of the underworld's most powerful figures, a man who told a reporter recently, "All I want is to be left alone to grow tomatoes," was gunned down in the backyard of a little Italian restaurant, and his head rested on the edge of a little tomato patch. He had been dining in the rear courtyard of Joe and Mary's restaurant on Knickerbocker Avenue in North Bushwick. With him, his long associate, his buffo, the man whom you had to see to pass messages to Galante, the head of the Bonanno crime family, and that man was Leonardo Coppola. He died with Galante. A woman who didn't want her face seen related,
"I heard 6 shots. They sounded like firecrackers, but I didn't think nothing of it until I looked out, and there were a few people dead in the backyard. I looked out, and the owner's son was trying to pull out his father. He was trying to pull out his father, and then the ambulance came. He was crying."
And what a grotesque picture it was. The man whose nickname was the Cigar, dying with a cigar still clutched in his mouth, his body contorted. On the table, the remains of a feast, tomato salad, part of the main course, a half glass of wine, a gallon jug nearby. On his left hand, a pinky ring. As police put it together, the killers came in 2 cars, the 3 triggermen rushing inside, ski masks over their faces. They allowed, police said, 3 people inside the restaurant to leave, then stormed into the backyard. The weapons, a machine gun, a .45 automatic, a shotgun. The restaurant owner dining with Galante fatally wounded. A 4th man sitting at the table, a friend of the owner's, managed to escape. The owner's son on the telephone inside saw the killers advancing, shouted a warning, "Watch out," but a second wave of 2 gunmen, also masked, entered and shot and wounded the son. The 2 men apparently came from a backup car.
It was a calm setting. There was a bottle of wine on a table, and it was a friendly atmosphere from what we can determine. Immediately upon arriving in the rear, these 3 gentlemen, I should state, the executioners, opened fire, and we have 2 people, DOA, on the scene. 2 were removed to the hospital, and 1 expired at the hospital.
Early this afternoon, a young police officer on a scooter, William Grimm, found one of the getaway cars about a half-mile away in a desolate, semi-industrial area. The scene on Knickerbocker Avenue was bizarre, in some ways so different from other memorable gangland murders. Back in the 50s, Albert Anastasia was gunned down in a midtown barbershop. Joey Gallo, not so long ago, was executed in a restaurant in Little Italy. But Galante, considered a candidate for the title of Boss of Bosses, met his end in a neighborhood that once was predominantly Italian-American, now is half Hispanic, and on the block where it happened, largely Puerto Rican. From the crowd, you got the impression that the Italian-Americans knew who had died here. The newcomers didn't.
When you heard the news, what'd you think?
Very decadent for the Italian people. Decadent, right down to the base.
No? Did you ever see Galante yourself? No.
I don't believe in people like that.
Do you know who Carmine Galante is?
For hours, the crowd waited. They looked out of windows, stared, talked, some laughed. They seemed perhaps more impressed by the turnout of police and news people than anything else. We heard a reporter say it could be a scene from The Godfather, but in a way, the facts were stranger than fiction. Perhaps no one will ever know exactly who killed him. That's a likely prognosis. What we do know is that Carmine Galante, the little man who lived in Greenwich Village, who was fighting to stay out of federal jail for an alleged parole violation, was having a kind of bon voyage party in the backyard of the restaurant in this rather dinky neighborhood where Joe Bonanno once reigned. Here, amid the clothes hanging from the lines, near the tomatoes and the crude grape arbor, he was celebrating the fact that he was to leave for Europe, to join his wife and daughter. But the man called the Cigar, the ruler of the old Bonanno family, left Joe and Mary's feet first. The would-be tomato farmer packed in a canvas bag on a voyage to the morgue. This is Gabe Pressman, Channel 5 News in Bushwick.